Welcome back to Improvisationally Speaking. This week's guest is Peter J. Strauss, and he is the founder and managing member of the Strauss Law Firm and also founder and CEO of Hamilton Captive Management, which is one of the most respected management firms in the country. This is an unusual guest for Improvisationally Speaking. We have a lot of artists, we have a lot of people who are more on the art side of things, travelers, but Peter is, I think it's going to be an interesting interview because I've read a lot of his articles on Forbes, and he has a really cool mindset around trust and around teamwork. And those are things that are really important in improvisation. And so I think he's going to be a really interesting guy to have on the podcast. So he has been an author of several books on insurance, captive insurance, and other things that most of my listenership might not have too strong of an understanding of about, but that's okay, because this is going to be about his methodology, his way of thinking, and his way of interacting with human beings, and his way of growing his company from something that was very small to something that is nationally respected in the insurance and law worlds. So Peter is a public speaker. He is a graduate of the New England School of Law and holds an LL.M. in estate planning from the University of Miami. And he is currently going to school at Harvard right now. His website, if you're interested, is peterjstrauss.com. That's peterjstrauss.com if you become interested in learning more about him through the process of this interview. From the Improvisationally Studios in sunny Seattle, Washington, this is Julian Schrenzel, and you are listening to Improvisationally Speaking, the podcast. Peter Strauss, welcome to Improvisationally Speaking.
Well, thank you for having me, Julian. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure's all mine. We're going to do a take two here because the first one we had bad connectivity. So, Peter, you are a published author. You have 4 books to your name. You've been on Forbes magazine. I'm particularly interested in some of the articles that you've written on Forbes. And one of the things that I noticed in your articles is a recurring theme of the value of trust in an organization. And I was wondering, you mentioned it as far as when the instance in which you had to get somewhere, your plane was delayed and canceled your flight, and your team made it happen, getting you there by helicopter and limousine where you needed to get to. You talked about the pilot of the plane that you were flying at one point where the cabin filled up with smoke, and the pilot totally just had your back, and you felt a sense of trust there. And of course, you didn't die. You're here talking to me now. And so obviously that turned out okay. You've got these times in your life where you've really valued trust from an individual and an organization to help with success and help you with making a great organization. And I'm wondering, where did your valuing trust as a vital element of the success of an organization come from in your life?
Yeah, so I think trust is it's an important element. It's probably the most vital element I could think of within an organization, and it typically comes from that from where a lot of places come from, which is something that you in general are seeking others to look for in you, and often don't get it. And so rightful or wrongly so, that you deserve that trust. It's to me, I like seeing best versions of individuals and growing myself, or evolving as an individual, and then evolving. What we talk about in the office a lot is we evolve as individuals, we evolve as an organization, and then we evolve. We try to help our clients evolve. That entire process stems from the idea that you first trust yourself, and then you find a good team that you can trust to carry out their responsibilities as well. So, absolutely.
I interview a lot of folks. I've interviewed quite a few entrepreneurs of some very respectable organizations. They've grown them to be. And it usually seems that the people who achieve these great things in life, most often, more than not, they come from something of a major disadvantage, or they come a long ways up from down. And I know from talking with you, there's a couple of stories that you have around your life where that sense of trust really came into play and focus for you. And I'm wondering if you might share those with me.
Sure. I think you're the only person to ever ask me this question. So, and as someone who talks to new people all day, every single day, I'm always, I love it when someone hits the question that I haven't been asked before. So that's kind of fun. So, um, yes, I can think of, I can think of a lot of examples, like two specific examples. The first I often refer to as self-inflicted. I grew up in a small town in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, and went to a small liberal arts college and promptly got booted out after my first semester. Um, and it was embarrassing. And I had to go to work. I went to work for a local hotel, and I worked the graveyard shift. I washed dishes and I served meals um, to a railroad team that would come in and off of, or off and on shifts. Um, did that for a long time, for what seemed like a long time when you're 18 years old, about 8 months or so. And um, I wanted to, as I was going through that process, I wanted to prove that I was better than what I was in that moment. And so getting back into college, getting back into the good graces of the family and friends, getting on the right track for growth as a student, but also as an individual, and then finding kind of professional track and that kind of thing, and then was certainly an area where I wanted everybody to trust me and to believe in me that I could be that person. Um, and and then a second scenario in which um, it really kind of stayed with me was when I finished graduate school and went to work as an associate attorney. About 2.5 years in, they offered me partnership. This was around 2009, when we were, I don't think they ever called it formally a depression, but I think we could agree it was pretty close to a depression. And the day they offered me partnership, I quit my job. Um, I didn't share the same business outlook, and more importantly, didn't share the same principles that they did. And I just kind of felt like um, if we weren't aligned, then we shouldn't be partners. And so, despite having a pregnant wife with our second child, um, I just quit my job and opened up the Strauss Law Firm the next day, and with an automated secretary, and told everybody, "Trust me, we got this."
Wow.
So those are two specific instances that I asked for it and didn't necessarily get it right away. Had to prove it, and proving it was kind of fun. And so I like to find individuals that sometimes share that same characteristic.
Thank you for sharing those stories. That's brilliant.
Absolutely.
Another Forbes article you wrote, which is called "What Makes a Business Owner Successful? Logistics." You mention the whirlwind of starting your business and then the need to rely on logistics, which, as you describe in your article, is the organization, the administration, the coordination, and the execution of your day-to-day. And you mentioned that as your business grows and grows, it's more and more important to be able to handle the logistics, and those smaller things that are not really logistical issues become logistical issues when you're dealing with more people and more organization and more money and more everything. That becomes important to you. So my interest, though, is totally on the flip side of that coin. Logistics and handling logistics is all about preparation, and it's all about the systematic processes and preparation and all of that. And we all know as business owners, and when you're starting your own thing, and Lord knows with your experience coming from cooking people meals on a railroad to owning your own law firm and consulting management firm, you've dealt with this. But I'm wondering, how do you see your ability to do the other thing, which is to roll with it or to make it work. How does that play in? And as the business grows, does that aspect of your being able to deal with it in the moment, the stuff that blindsides you without you thinking of it, that all those logistics planning go out the window because you need to act right now, does that come into play? And how for you has it come into play in starting your business, and how has that changed as your business has grown?
I think every organization is different in their value chain or their culture chain. Ours is one of rapid pace, and we call it organized chaos. And if you're not an individual that likes to kind of embrace organized chaos, then it's probably not a good business fit for you. So I think the first piece is understanding what kind of personality you have, what kind of temperament, what kind of drive you have. For me, I went to a Montessori school when I was a child, and teaches kind of a different style of learning, and you learn at an early age to roll with it and gravitate towards your strengths. The flip side being that you tend to leave behind your weaknesses, and you learn to roll pretty quickly. So logistics are a part of our it's the fabric of our day, frankly. Today I'll be on a plane, I'll be in a car, I'll probably be in an Uber. Tomorrow I have a speech, followed by a conference, followed by another flight. Something always changes. On Sunday, this past Sunday morning was a fun morning. I woke up in southern Texas. I was on a barge, and then a fan boat, and then a duck blind, and then a dune buggy onto, I went and jumped out of a plane.
This is on Tuesday? This happened on Tuesday?
This past Sunday.
This Sunday?
Yes. Jumped out of a plane, then got onto an actual plane that it didn't jump out of. We had a maintenance issue when we landed at our first stop, so we rented a car. We drove the car 200 miles, got home rather late, and then had to get up the next day, get 4 kids off to school, and just go with it. So temperament is the right. I think you're exactly right. Logistics are a piece of the day. It's part of every single moment of our day. In order to do it, you've got to have the right temperament to handle it. And then of course you have to trust the individuals that are part of your organization to just get the job done.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, that was interesting. That was good. And my follow-on to that, which is brief, is has your ability, you seem to have the ability to roll with it. You have that balance of using logistics and working out all the details so you can clear the path for yourself. But also when that inevitable thing comes up, you can roll with it. Has the success of your organization changed your ability to roll with it? As your organization has grown, as you've gotten busier, as your logistic world has increased, its complexity?
No, I would say, if anything, the ability to roll with it only increases. The need to be able to roll with it only increases it. The idea that I think I sometimes go to work thinking that this is going to slow down, gain more structure, and we won't have to roll with it. In reality, the culture is such that, and we say it in our office all the time, we go where we need to be, and we don't leave until the job is done.
Yep.
And so with that understanding, if you're coming into the organization with the mentality that you're going to work from 9 to 5, that's not how we operate. We operate, get the job done and go home. So, and get home however we need to get home, and then let's move on to the next job. So it's going to increase, I'm sure.
Thank you.
The ability.
Yeah. I have something of a hot button question for you that I want to ask you. And this comes from a pervasive idea, a pervasive belief from people who generally are folks who do not have as much as the people who earn the top 1% in the country. and that is a lot of people look into the people who would be your clients. They may look on your work as a essentially a corporate tax lawyer. That's one of your practices that you have. They may see your work in the light of, oh, this guy is a guy who helps the top 1% avoid paying their taxes and paying their fair share to the government. And I know that that's just a belief, and it's a pervasive belief. And I'm wondering if you might speak to that. Firstly, to maybe correct any kind of misconception about that, and secondly, you approach your business with a lot of integrity. Integrity is salt and pepper through everything that I've read about you and your history. And I would imagine a person like you applies that integrity to everything, including the times that you work for your in corporate tax for organizations. And I'm wondering, how then does your practice, how does that play in to the business of helping large corporations pay less in their taxes, I suppose? Can you speak to that?
Sure. It's interesting going through law school. They teach you something your first year. Don't ask the question you really want to know, which is in reference to, did OJ's lawyers ever ask OJ if he actually did it? They probably didn't ask him because they didn't want to know. In that regard, they were able to simply apply the law and let the law kind of take care of itself. And I mention that because do you, from a fundamental standpoint, from an integrity standpoint, from an ethics standpoint, agree with everything that's going on? Not just in tax, but in multiple regards, or more specifically to tax? No, of course not. But the laws are what the laws are. And so I think that from the standpoint of, you have to remove emotion, which is very hard to do. You have to remove emotion sometimes from the task at hand and focus on what specifically is capable. And I would say that I would rather work with a client who uses the laws to their advantage and is fully compliant in their reporting obligations than work with a client who hides assets or isn't transparent and isn't doing things the right way. So to me, or to be more specific, having a foreign bank account, there is nothing wrong with that, provided you report that on your income statement, or on your tax return. Now, whether or not having the funds in a foreign jurisdiction provides any sort of tax benefit, that's secondary to the question of, are we going to report this in the appropriate manner? And if so, then yes, we're going to work with you. If not, then no, we don't even want to work with you. We don't even want to examine to see if there's anything that can be done. So that's kind of like the bland, boring side of it, I think, or maybe that side. The flip side, I always think the interesting social argument is, and I was flipping through, I'm getting new into social media. I'm learning. I'm like a dinosaur into social media apparently. So I'm learning Twitter and LinkedIn and all these different organizations. So I'm relatively new to it, but I was looking at Twitter yesterday. I think it's not Twitter, Instagram. Sorry, I'm a dinosaur. So I was looking at Instagram yesterday, and I saw 33 nurses sitting in a waiting room, sending a thank you to their employer. Like I said, an office party the night before, and you're sitting there thinking that probably to the masses, the employer, being a surgeon, looks like the successful, business owning, he's got everything made, he's that guy. In reality, what's going on is he's just created jobs for 33 nurses and their families. So is it okay for someone who can afford to take advantage of some of the laws out there in a respectful and appropriate manner to do so, understanding that, the better we can do at saving them money on the bottom line means the more opportunity they can provide for their employees, for their families. So I think if you look at it in the broader context of that, it raises a pretty interesting, discussion.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Do you want to say pay more tax and have less on the bottom line so you can hire fewer and you can provide for those and their families? Or do you want to say pay less, scale up, buy equipment, employ more, buy goods and services, so on and so forth? And so I think that's a more interesting conversation than the blatant, the blunt black or white line on the legal side of the coin.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you a question about the legacy, a legacy question, which is really shifting gears for you. But
yeah,
you've done a lot in your life. You've accomplished quite a bit, and you're a young guy. You've got a lot more to do. And I'm wondering, what do you feel at this point in your career and life? What legacy would you like to leave with your life's work?
Wow, very good question. I think I have some people kind of looking at me wondering this. I think you get two questions today that nobody's ever asked me. I'm big on evolution. So, someone asked me for my 100-year plan one time, and I told them, what's a 100-year plan? So I look at kind of what's a 100-minute plan or a 100-day plan. Legacy, I would say that I think the important thing is to continue to evolve. And that's evolve as an individual person, or an individual first. And then evolve in all the different directions from there. So it's sense of self, and then within the family context, and within the office context, and along the social context and the educational context, in any way you can. The line that always comes to mind is become the best version of yourself. That kind of, I'm a rising tide raises all boats kind of person. So I think the legacy would be one of continue to evolve.
Thank you, Peter. If someone wanted to learn a little bit more about you, your history, your work, where would you direct that person to go?
I would, let's see, where would I direct you? I'd invite you to a conversation. I would say you could find me on peterjstrauss.com. That has links to all the different, or some of the different companies that we work with, and some of the different services that we provide. And love to talk more about it.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. It was a good conversation, great questions.
Thanks for joining us this week on Improvisationally Speaking. Next episode, we've got Grammy-nominated conductor and music director of the South Bend Symphony Orchestra in Indiana, Alistair Willis, as our next guest. And not only are we going to be speaking to him, but it'll be live and in person here at the Improv Alive Studios. It's going to be a great episode. Please tune in. I'm Julian Schrenzel, and this is Improvisationally Speaking, the podcast. Thanks for joining us. See you soon.